Good evening. We will be conducting this evening's meeting via Zoom, as well as we have a Zoom room available for public comment on the first floor of City Hall because the public notices went out shortly after the last council meeting where council decided to go to 100% virtual. So we do have a Zoom room open for public comment. We do have one person in that room right now, and members of the public may also view and listen to the meeting tonight on Wave Channel 18 and online through the city's website as noted on the agenda. If folks want to participate in live public comment, they can do so via the Zoom platform. Please refer to the agenda for instructions. Pastor Bill Rath of Lincoln Christian Life Church will be giving the invocation this evening, and Mayor Silhai will begin the meeting immediately after.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be able to pray. And so if you would bow your heads and close your eyes with me. Lord God, we thank you so much for the opportunity that you give us to steward the resources of our city, of our country, of our state. And I pray right now, God, that you would give wisdom and direction to our city council members as they lead and guide and direct us. And I just thank you that you are going to be with them and you are going to give them a productive meeting. And I pray that you would be with all of our first responders as they do their best to serve and to help our city. Pray you'd keep them safe and protected. And I just thank you again for another opportunity to lead and serve. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's 5:59 by my clock, so we'll wait 1 minute.
Sorry, I prayed too early.
No, it was perfect. All right, I have 6 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting to order. Ms. Scanlon, can I get a roll call?
Yes, Mayor. Council Member Andriotta.
Here.
Council Member Joyner. I believe he had something come up, so he may not be attending this evening. Council Member Carlskint.
Present.
Council Member Lauritsen.
Here.
And Mayor Silhai.
Here. All right, we'll move on to report from closed session. We did not have a closed session this night, so we'll go on to Pledge of Allegiance, which Councilmember Andriotta has volunteered to do for us.
All right. Let's prepare and stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Hold on, I don't know why this won't let me turn it back on. Hold on, I'm trying. All right, we're back. All right, let's go on to agenda modifications. Do any of my colleagues have any modifications to tonight's agenda?
No.
No, seeing, hearing none, we'll move along to presentations. Tonight we have a presentation that I'm very much looking forward to. 6A, the 100th anniversary of the Civic Center, and Ms. Scanlon will be giving that for us.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. So let me get my PowerPoint up here. And hopefully you can see that. So good evening, Mayor Silhai and council members. In a recent city council meeting, city council requested we recognize the 100th anniversary of the Civic Center. The Lincoln Archive Museum had photos and details about the early days of the building, which were used in this presentation. Note, the presentation is a bit condensed from that is included in the packet. This is, before 1900, 511 Fifth Street was the home of Galusha Gray. Mr. Gray was a Lincoln citizen since 1861, and his home stood there for many years. He was involved in several businesses, and he served Lincoln as a councilman and as a mayor. After 1900, no building occupied the site until 1921. After the town purchased the site from Mr. Gray, it passed a bond issue in 1919 with 153 yes votes and 15 no votes to build a civic auditorium for $22,298. The building was done in Spanish colonial revival style and had a large stage at the south end, a balcony, a production booth, restrooms, and hat check rooms. And this is a photo of the town laying the cornerstone for the building in 1921. And particularly interesting is the model of the cars, and then you can kind of see the framing that's going up, and it looks like the architect has a sign over towards the right. The Civic Center was under construction, and during that time, there was a firehouse next door, as well as City Hall on the other side of the firehouse. Note, there was a well in front of the City Hall and the fire station there. The next slide is the Civic Center nearing completion. You can still see those small buildings to the right. And then in the early 1930s, the Civic Center had many events held in the building because of its great amenities. Several rooms on the north side housed city offices and the city council. The city council met upstairs facing Fifth Street, and the auditorium was also used for plays, operettas, concert, dances, large meetings, and other functions until 1972, when the entire interior was remodeled to serve city government. In the remodel, after that, it was remodeled in 2013 and was returned to its original state. The funds for that 2013 renovation came from an art grant, which was originally written to house Lincoln Archives and the Lincoln Arts Building, which are now in 2 other downtown buildings. This is a photo of 5 men standing in front of the city center. 3 are on donkeys and 2 are standing. Those that are pictured are Sam Goldine, Walter Corey, Ed Wyatt, and Elmer Bierman. Elmer Bierman obviously is associated with the Bierman's Plaza. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to the Lincoln Archives Museum, especially Elizabeth Jensen, Bill Clinton, and Sherry Wygant, who assisted in giving these photos and details for this presentation. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. Do any of my council members have anything they'd like to say or add before we move along?
I just want to say thanks, Gwen, for putting that together. I've been looking forward to that also, and that was really awesome, and I really appreciate the history. Thank you so much. You did an amazing job.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll just ditto and echo what Holly just said. I've been looking forward. I think this was the agenda item I was looking forward to most tonight. It's just a very cool history, and so it was fun to see those pictures. So thank you so much. All right, we'll move along to public comment. Ms. Scanlon, do we have any public comments?
So, Mayor, I do have a hand raised. Mr. Schreiber, please go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon, Albert Schreiber, Moore Road. So I got a call this afternoon from my neighbor, Jackie Davis. Wanted to talk about the council meeting tomorrow night. The reason there was some confusion, it was advertised, publicized, whatever you want to call it, as being on Wednesday, the 14th. So while it's nice that you set up the Zoom room for people that thought it was in person, because it was also publicized as in person, you know, you completely got the day of the week wrong. And so the notice of public hearing was completely wrong. I believe you received an email from our attorney stating that. I'm assuming because you didn't pull the Village 5, Village 7 item off of the agenda during any kind of change in the agenda, that you're still going to continue forward with it, which is kind of shameful, but we'll get to that later. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Byron, please. Byron? Looks like he lost his audio. I'll check and see if anybody in the Zoom room would like to make a comment.
No comment at this time.
Thank you. Mayor, I have no other hands.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, the hand did just go up. Hold on. Mr. Chapman, I don't see that you have audio. I'm sorry, Mayor. He doesn't have any audio to unmute, so I'm unable to mute him.
Maybe
Or
he
unmute
can
him.
email in his comments to you later so that we can
Yes,
have
thank
them.
you.
That would be great. All right, we'll bring it back up to the consent agenda. I'll read my normal intro. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or resident requests a specific item be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any of my colleagues wish to remove, wish to remove an item? Seeing none, is that correct? All right, how about from the public? Ms. Scanlon, do we have any?
Yes, I do have a hand
Okay.
raised. Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead.
Good evening, council members. Mike Garabedian. Item 8L, I have a comment on.
Thank you. No other hands are, I'm sorry, one did just go up. Mr. Schreiber, please go ahead.
Yeah, 8D is in dog, please.
No other hands are raised.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I motion.
Do I have a second?
Okay.
Can I get a roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes. All right, let's go to 8D. Mr. Scott, do you want to, actually, do we want to, Mark, how would you want to handle that? Do you want to find out what his question was first, since that's a report, or would you like to just give a little summary?
No, if possible, I'd like to find out the question. It's just a regular
Yeah,
treasurer's report, so it could be any of a number of
Mr.
items.
Schreiber, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. My question is on the, oh man, now I lost it. It's in regards to the money coming in. There's like $20 million, like a transfer. I was just wondering where that money came from and where it's going. I can't remember the section it's in, but it's in all the other where money's coming in.
Right. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer that. In the report, which is it's the report about the money that the city invests on a regular ongoing basis. We have three primary areas of investment that we use. One is the investments that are handled through a U.S. bank account. And that's more aggressively invested money. Now, we all know cities are not allowed to invest in anything terribly controversial or risky, I should say. But that is the account where we are able to do a little bit more risk in our investments, and as a return, we get a better return. And then we have our LAIF account, which is the state investment pool, which in recent years has returned almost nothing. In fact, at one point it was a 0% return. And that's the safest investment you can do. So cities will put money there, especially if they want to hold for liquidity. And then the third area is our OPEB trust, which we have also, the city council has placed some extra money in this year. In fact, in this report, you see the $700,000 being put into that investment account from the other holding account that the city has had. So it went from one pocket to another. But the $20 million that Mr. Schreiber is referencing, 10 million of that was simply moved from the US Bank's checking account into the more regular investment account. And that money is a little bit more risky investment. There's several reasons we're able to move that money during a certain time of year. One is that, first of all, July was a good month for investment, so there was extra money earned during the month. Secondly, it's timing. During certain times of year, we have to hold more money in liquid form, and during other times of the year, we don't. So part of this money, 10 million of the money came out of the LAIF account, and 10 million just simply moved from one US bank account into another for a total of 20 million. And that allows us to make a little bit extra money on our investment of our funds during the next investment period. So pretty safe, normal kinds of activities by the city.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ms. Scanlon, do we have any further public comment on this item?
I do have a hand raised.
Okay.
Mr. Chapman, please go ahead.
Can you hear me, Gwen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Byron Chapman. Madam Mayor, council members, and city staff, Byron Chapman, 12 Bridges area. On this particular subject too, I'd like to expand it maybe just a little bit, because it is basically the amount of funds that I'm addressing in this particular move. If the city has funds in which to be in a checking account, and I'm pretty sure it's for to cover any purchases that need to be paid in a specific period of time. So it's money basically like anyone else's checkbook. When you write the check, you go to pay something. If the city has that kind of money, in addition to the other investments, perhaps the city may be able to look at that. Let's say, let's not even take the $20 million and not even the $10 million. Let's do the $5 million. If you look at that $5 million and you spread that over a 10-year period, you actually have enough money. I did the rough math in order for a 10-year time frame to add at least 3, if not 4 bodies to public safety, being police officers and fire department officers. So I would seriously like the city to take a look at that. As the interim city manager had just mentioned, the city is not in the position, nor should they be, to simply make money and generate money. We do have funds set aside for that. I understand that. There's good times, there's bad times. However, we've been trying to get literally the fire safety coverage for the people here in Lincoln for quite some time, and it just isn't budget. When I saw this move in the transfer of those funds, at what point in time do we get to the point in time where we go, let's start looking at whatever funds we have available to the city? And this seems like one of those opportunities that has raised its head that we certainly should be able to take care of. I mean, every little bit helps, whether it's 2 personnel, 3 personnel, whatever it may be. $20 million, that's a chunk of change in order to, at today's rates, that's not saying a lot. So I would really hope the city takes a look at that. And I would hope that anyone else that's watching and listens and sees this would contact the city and ask them to take a bigger step in action in order to utilize those funds for the betterment of everyone. We're in pretty good shape right now, and I think this is a situation I think we certainly can take advantage of. So with that, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Mark.
I appreciate that comment. What's difficult to understand about a city budget sometimes for the public is that we have money that is held for all sorts of different reasons. First of all, this is not all general fund money. In fact, it's mostly not general fund money. Some of it is trust money, some of it is enterprise fund money. But the point is, we do once a year go through a very elaborate process to decide what money we have that's available for allocation for all of those purposes. And this last year, the city council did allocate additional money for police positions. That's precisely what did happen. But it's a look at what money is available during the course of the year net. And this money that's in investment on a month-to-month basis is not money that we have that's extra money. It's not like if someone looked in their bank account and they had an extra $5,000, they might decide to go on a vacation. This is the money that the city is going to spend later in the year to pay salaries and to pay for equipment and capital projects, and it's all the utility money. So it's not extra money, it's just the money that hasn't yet been spent. And so we are, in fact, every year in the budget process looking at that analysis that Mr. Garabedian's talking about.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon, were there any other public comment before we bring
No
it
other
back?
hands, right?
All right, we'll bring it back up. Do any of my council members have any questions? Or if not, can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Do you have a second?
second,
Roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes. Councilmember
Carlskin,
yes,
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes. All right, we'll move on to 8L, I believe is next. Getting there, 1 second. Okay, this is a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract for construction with Sierra National Construction. And is Araceli available?
Yes, good evening.
You want to just give a real brief, maybe what it is, and we'll see what the question is.
Yes,
Thanks
so
so much.
this is, good evening, Mayor and council members, Araceli Casares. And this is a project that's been in the works for several years and has a component of CMAQ, congestion mitigation and air quality funds, which are federal funds administered through Caltrans. And we also have local funds from streets, water, and wastewater. The project overall has all those components: streets, water, and wastewater. The majority of the project is to repair the at-grade crossings at 1st and 5th Street at the railroad tracks to make them more pedestrian and bicycle friendly for all of our residents that use those crossings on a daily basis. So that's the bulk of the project. Included in there is rehabbing the water line that crosses 1st Street. Since we will be in the vicinity of and constructing at 1st Street, we will be rehabbing that water line crossing there in the railroad tracks, and also parallel rehabbing some of the sewer pipe, not all of it, but about 600 linear feet of sewer will be rehabbed that parallels and crosses at 6th Street for that project as well. So this project went out to bid in July. We opened up bids. We had 4 interested bidders. The low bidder came in, Sierra National Construction, who is the contractor we are recommending for award of contract. We've gone back and forth with Caltrans, received their approval. So this is hopefully our next stop so we can get the notice to proceed out and get this project going.
Thank you. Ms. Scanlon, should we go to Mr. Garabedian to see what his
Yes,
question is?
Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead.
Thank you. Now, I support this project. The reason I'm commenting is as I read through the report, I had a heck of a time figuring out what the project was about. And the explanation we just had was really good because it's multifaceted. And in the staff report, I really couldn't figure out very much from that at all. But then going through the materials, 174 pages of it, I began to figure it out. So I just think it would be good to have a shorthand description up front. It would have been for this kind of project. So it's really just a comment on the process for what's obviously a needed project. And there are other even longer, so many pages, 800 page and a couple hundred. You have all these things for the public to read. It would be good to make it as easy as possible to get into it and understand. So thanks for being able to speak about this.
Yeah. And I apologize for that. We do include the full project description when we come to council for PS&E approval. So that's something we'll take forward and have abbreviated project description for these awards of contract, if that is what council desires as well.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment, Ms. Scanlon?
No other hands are raised, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Chapman, please go ahead. I think he lost his audio again. I'm sorry, Mr. Chapman, you seem to be having audio issues. Maybe call in, but you can certainly email me any comments that you have and I'll get those to City Council.
Thank you. Any other?
Sorry, no other hands are raised, Mayor.
We'll bring it back to council. Do any of my colleagues have any questions on this? And if not, it doesn't look like it. Can I get a motion?
I move adoption.
Which one of you wants to be a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Lauritsen?
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent?
Yes.
And Mayor Silhai?
Yes. All right, that concludes the consent agenda, right? I'm not missing anything? All right, we'll move along to public hearings with 9A, conduct a public hearing and waive full reading and introduce by title only ordinance 1039B, amending Lincoln Municipal Code 18.69.000 and 18.69.030 to allow the city to participate in oak tree preservation on a more regional basis via Placer County Conservation Program, and finding the ordinance exempt from environmental review under CEQA. And our city attorney, Ms. Mollenkopf, will be giving a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Silhai. So the item before you is an amendment to sections 18.69.000 and 18.69030, which would remove the restriction for participation by way of use of oak tree mitigation funds limited within the city limits to allow us to participate potentially in the Placer County Conservation Plan. Now, this item was brought to me shortly after I started my tenure here in the city of Lincoln, when the PCCP adoption process was still underway and had been so for, I guess, about 20 years or so. And it was expressed to me that the original, or that at least there was an intent from City Council at that point to be able to participate in the PCCP to allow for more regional participation in the preservation of oak trees that would not necessarily be, we would able to be leveraged within the city limits just due to size restrictions and availability of property and that type of thing. And so since we have now had the PCCP adopted and the city is now a participating partner in that project, I moved forward at the request of a city council person to advance this item to you. So it is a relatively minor amendment to our oak tree ordinance. Section 18.69.000 basically is amended to say that instead of the city council finds and determines that the oak trees within the city are beneficial to the health, it will just basically state that oak trees are beneficial to the health of our community. And then with respect to section 1869.030, subparagraph 2, talking about the fees that are deposited with the city and the authorization for their use, it will state that instead of such fees shall be deposited in a separate fund and used to plant new trees in the city, to maintain existing trees owned by the city, and to maintain trees within the city's right of way. It would be amended to say Such fees shall be deposited in a separate fund and used to plant new trees, to secure oak tree habitat, to maintain existing trees owned by the city, and to maintain trees within the city's right of way. And so I want to make very clear, because I understand that there has been litigation filed against the city regarding potential refunds, regarding oak tree mitigation, reporting, that type of thing, that this is not fiscal impact. This is not authorizing distribution of funds in any way. This is simply revising the ordinance so that at some point in the future, if the city council so desired, based on existing circumstances at that point in time, they could dedicate fees to the PCCP to be used for the acquisition of oak tree canopies, fields. And so it also does not restrict the city council in the future from determining that there are projects within the city limits, such as the one that was recently adopted by the city council for purposes of preservation and maintenance of oak trees. So this is simply a mechanism to give the city council more flexibility to participate in the PCCP, which is a 20-year plus endeavor that this city council or city, not all of you, of course, were involved in creating. And so that is my report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address any issues or concerns that you have. In my view, this is a relatively minor change to our oak tree mitigation ordinance, does not result in a transfer of funds, does not result in our ability as a city to look forward to results of litigation or participation in the PCCP or maintenance of our local city trees. So with that, I will end my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You're muted, Mayor.
I just figured that out. All right. Being a public hearing, we'll stick to our normal format. So I'll go through each one of us for questions, and then I'll open the public hearing. We'll hear from the public. We'll close it, and we'll come back for comments and any discussion that's necessary. Does that work for everyone? So we'll start with Councilmember Andreotta.
Thanks.
Have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I do have some comments, but I will wait until after public comment.
All right, great. And Councilmember Joyner was not able to join us so far, right? I'm not skipping him. All right.
No, Mayor.
Let's go to Councilmember Carlskin.
I have no questions. But I'll have,
Yeah, Councilmember Lauritsen.
I have no questions either.
All right, I also have no questions in advance of the comments. So Ms. Scanlon, I will officially open the public hearing. Do we have any comments? Or any
Yes, we do. Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead.
Hi, Mike Garabedian for Placer County Tomorrow and Heel, Lincoln. I have a number of very grave concerns about this ordinance. As it's drafted now, I oppose it very strongly. It may be very minor in terms of the number of words in it, but it looks like it has major implications. For instance, it looks like tree fees generated in the city could go to protect trees outside of the city. And I think that would just be one potential example. The crux of the legal issue is the weakness, the language about not possible. When replacement of oak trees on a developing parcel is not possible. What does that mean? Is that referring to some other statute or something about what not possible means? It sounds like something any staff member could say, well, it's just not possible, or just a developer says it's not possible. So the question of tying this to the Placer County Conservation Program raises a question. Is the PCCP going to turn into, if it isn't already, a license to destroy natural resources, or in this case, trees? So this really needs to be better thought out and discussed in terms of when it might be used and how it might be used. The city has a horrible record taking care of trees. The drainage areas along the east side of Joyner Park and the south side, cutting 20 trees, destroying these grand old cottonwood trees and the nice stream through them, and it's turned it. The trees are all sprouting like crazy. It's turned into a jungle blocked up with all kinds of vegetation. It was a serious problem taking out those trees. I'm trained in forestry, so I'm not opposed to cutting trees. But for instance, it took out, as I mentioned before, the shade of the South Baby playground during a good part of the day. So the taking out of those trees, apparently not by the parks people, by somebody hired or something like that, and justified as being permitted by a water board general permit, is a serious suggestion that the city cannot manage trees. And the recent oak protection ordinance that says branches could be cut up to 20 feet. I mean, how many oaks are 20 feet tall? That is a really strange provision too. So this seems like a multiplication of the city's inability to wrap itself around good management of its trees. So if there's some way that somebody other than by the seat of the pants is going to say it's not possible, I'd like to know what it is. And that's the exact language, whereas not possible, and so forth. At the first page of the staff report, developing the parcel is not possible. That is like open season.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Garabedian. The 3 minutes has expired. We do have a few other hands raised. Lena Lebowski, please go ahead.
Good evening. I realize there's no funds being transferred in this action, but we do have a lawsuit against this fund, and it's we, Lincoln, being sued. I would request that the city council not move forward on this or anything to do regionally until this gets settled. We need a judge telling us what's going to happen on this fund. And then if you want to bring something forward after that, you know, consider it that time. But it's premature to start moving forward in a regional way like this until this lawsuit is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Albert Shiver. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Albert Shiver. I find it kind of fascinating that that this even came up. Kind of coattailing off of the last two speakers, you got litigation against you over this oak tree thing. You just had a bunch of controversy over the oak tree maintenance. It seems like you'd want to stay away from oak tree anything right now. I'd be curious to hear from the council member that brought this forward and why right now. Why now? That would be interesting to hear from them. And if you look at the in the staff report under 18.69.000-purpose, if you read through there, that paragraph is all about benefits to the city citizens of Lincoln. I find it fascinating now that whichever council member wants to now give the citizens money to outside of the city of Lincoln to benefit. And I find it interesting that your city attorney is going along with this and is okay with it, especially now with, like I said, the litigation and everything. It seems like this item, was set up for the benefits of the citizens of Lincoln, and now you want to disperse that money elsewhere. Seems kind of shady, slimy, call it what you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stan Nader. Please go ahead.
Thank you.
I believe the city has sufficient Oak Glen woodlands that could be purchased with the oak tree mitigation money. And I don't see why we should be going outside the city when this money was raised from projects that happened within the city. And as Mr. Schreiber said, this money is to be for the benefit of the citizens. And I don't see how that happens when you're taking the money outside the city and buying oak trees far away. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Byron Chapman. Please go ahead. Let me see if this phone number, can you unmute yourself, Mr. Chapman? I don't see that the phone can unmute themselves, so we're still having audio issues, Mr. Chapman. Mayor, there are no other hands raised.
Okay, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to my colleagues, and we'll go through. It sounded like people had some comments, so we'll go through the same order, and then we can have discussion after everyone has a chance to speak. So starting with Councilmember Andreotta.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so you know, I appreciate the sentiment behind this and the thought about it and partnering with the PCCP. I appreciate that, I really do. But you know, maybe down the line, you know, making some contributions to that program for oak trees, not opposed to that some other time maybe. But right now, I mean, I actually was very surprised that this was on the agenda, to be quite honest with you. First of all, I do not think that we should be doing anything with this until this litigation is over. I appreciate Ms. Molikoff's comments about not transferring funds, and I believe that to be sincere, but I still think that it would be in our best interest not to do anything with this until that's over. I mean, I agree to the oak tree plan that we passed after, you know, we brought it back several times because I felt it was necessary and we got that right. And so I agreed to that reluctantly through this litigation, but I think this is just too much. So, and honestly, I'm not really comfortable with changing the ordinance just to be open-ended like that. So I'm not really in favor of this at this time, but I do appreciate the thought behind it and the sentiment. But I'm going to vote no on this.
All right, Councilmember Carlskin.
I'm the one that brought this up 3 years ago. Somebody asked why now. Well, PCCP just came into existence finally. And that, if you will, was the catalyst. I would have liked to have seen this changed prior to that. The fact that it is the city council that will authorize any transfer or use of funds is giving the council the flexibility to do that inside or outside in a regional context. Somebody said that, well, that why are we going to buy trees far away? That person may not understand even the concepts of PCCP, which is to surround the community of Lincoln with well-preserved, well-managed wildlife habitat and biologicals. Somebody said that the word's not possible. We are talking about 4 words in an existing ordinance. And those 4 words simply allows a future city council the flexibility. If the optimum solution to a situation is to use a vehicle like PCCP to satisfy oak tree mitigation, they can do it. Right now, we can't. Part of the reason that the fund has gotten so big was with the intention, as I understand, and I wasn't involved 20 years ago, but the intention was to be able to purchase and preserve in perpetuity large blocks of oak habitat. So, number one, it's a minor change to an existing ordinance. If you have problems with that ordinance, that should be taken up at a different time. It does nothing other than allow a current and future city council a level of flexibility that they don't have with the way the current legislation is written. So I'm strongly, obviously, in support of this. I'm strongly in support of PCCP, and I don't see conceivably how that's a danger to our natural habitat, as was mentioned by somebody. I've spent too many times, too long, reading the documents, looking at the science, talking to the biologists, to think that there's anything in PCCP itself that is designed to harm the environment. That's plain ridiculous. Thank you.
Councilman Lorton.
I fully concur with Councilman Carlskin. I've seen the work that PCCP does, and I think we could really benefit by some regional cooperation. Oak trees are important, and even oak trees that are just slightly outside our boundaries, will definitely benefit us. I mean, just the fact that they're there, they provide a habitat, and shade, whatever. I mean, but no, I'm all for cooperation like this.
All right, thank you. I totally get where you're coming from, Holly. I get the concerns of the residents, and I totally get your reasoning. I do, though, think that I fall more in line with what Dan said. I think that us supporting the PCCP is important. I think that that regional benefit of surrounding our community in that green space is a huge asset to our community if it comes to fruition. And I think that us contributing to that is not problematic. I do understand, though, again, the nature of the concerns, where they're coming from, why they're there. So definitely don't want to invalidate any of that. But I will be voting yes for this.
I'm not opposed to what you're saying, partnering with them. I'm not opposed to that theoretically. What I'm opposed to is doing it right now in the middle of litigation. That's what I'm opposed to. I think we should wait until we get that settled. Then we know where we are. Then we can, come back to this ordinance and talk about it some more. That's what I would like to see
You're next, Dan.
happen.
It's fine. Go ahead. Finish, Holly. You can finish.
I'm finished. Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
By voting for this doesn't change exactly what you said, Holly. It's in our purview, whether if we're in the middle of litigation and we don't want, as a council, to do something, which is usually a prudent course, we wouldn't vote to do it. I am so frustrated. This ordinance should have been changed 3 years ago. It was obvious to me when I got involved with PCCP that, the way the ordinance was written was wrong and would never allow
You might be right that it should have been changed 3 years ago, but it wasn't, and we weren't in the middle of thing. I get what you're saying, that it doesn't change anything. We have to vote on whether we transfer money. I get that. But I also think it's valuable for us to use a little bit of prudence and protect the perception of what's happening. And, let's handle one thing at a time. Like, we're trying to build trust with our community. We're trying to be transparent, open, and let people know that we're not doing shenanigans behind closed doors and whatever, because we're not, but we're trying to get that across. We're in the middle of a litigation. People have been talking about this Oak Tree Fund for years. People have been angry about it for years. We're in the middle of this issue trying to figure it out. I think it would be prudent for us as a council, as representatives of our constituents, if we just cool the jets for a second, let it finish, and then come back to this. I understand what you're saying, Dan, and I get your frustration. I voted for the PCCP. I'm not opposed to partnering with the region how we see fit, right? As long as we have control over it, I'm not opposed to that. I just think that right now it's more important for us to be prudent and to just, protect the perception of what we're actually doing. That's all.
I think we're gonna.
I'm gonna say, I think that it, yeah. Are we ready for a motion on it? I do agree though with you, Holly. If there weren't the provision in there that, like to Dan's point, we are going to have to make those decisions as a council anyway. So it's not like it is deferring any judgment, and it's not doing anything to get in the way of transparency, because those opportunities will continue to be present. And so that's why I am going to be voting for it, because I feel like that is like a backstop to ensure that those very concerns are addressed within the ordinance. If that weren't in there, I would share your concerns, but I feel like it's been addressed in a way that is like a compromise of let's continue to do what needs to be done to conduct business, to Dan's concerns, but also let's make sure that we are holding ourselves accountable and responsible for that dialogue and transparency to our constituency, akin to your concerns. So for me, I kind of feel like this is the happy middle of both, and balancing the various duties that we have, right? We have let's make sure city business and our everything continues to build, and let's also be responsive and responsible. And I feel like they're met in the ordinance. So that's why I guess.
And not to belabor the argument, but just really quick to make a point. So to say that we want to be responsive and we care about what people think and whatever, we just had several people say, please wait. Alina said it very respectfully. Hey, I get what you're trying to do. Can you just at least wait? And that's my point, is like, we don't always agree with comments, right? We only get some comments during the council meeting, and we receive lots of them otherwise that people may not know about. So I'm not saying that just because somebody makes a comment that we automatically have to do what they ask. But in this particular case, when people have asked us, hey, can you just wait, till this litigation is over? I think it behooves us to go, yeah, you know what, that's probably a thing to do. But that's the last thing I'm going to say about it. I get your point, but I think that this right here is a lot of reasons why people say, well, you just do whatever you want to do. You never listen to the public. And I'm not trying to be critical. I'm just saying, to me right now, that feels like that we just don't listen to what people ask us. And it wasn't even, an accusatory thing. It was just like, hey, can you just wait? So. But thank you. I appreciate you letting me vent.
No, it's not venting. I think you have valid points. I feel like they're, for me, addressed enough. Do we have a motion?
A motion. Do I have to read the whole thing?
I read it when I introduced it, so I don't think so. But Christine, advice?
I would just say that Councilmember Lordson, you're making a motion to adopt ordinance or 1039B, amending Lincoln Municipal Code sections 18.69.000 and 18.69.030 regarding oak tree preservation, and finding the ordinance is exempt from environmental review under CEQA. Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Okay.
Second,
Thank you very much.
second,
Can I get a roll call?
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Nope.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes. All right, thank you. I appreciate that we're able to have such like civil dialogue over things that are sometimes hard. Thank you to my colleagues. for
welcome.
that. All right, item 9B, conduct a public hearing regarding Village 5 and Village 7 environmental pre-zone general development plan amendment and annexation authorization. And I don't need to, I'll save the reading of all the rest of them for the actual motion. I believe that our community development director, Mr. Prosser, will be giving the staff report.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you tonight, although would be considered a simple land use issue, has other complications involved. So what we are asking tonight is an authorization by City Council to allow staff to submit an application for annexation of Village 5 and the unincorporated remnant portions of Village 7. Submitting an application just begins the process. It is submitted to the Placer County Local Agency Formation Commission, who will evaluate and analyze the application and independently review and make recommendations to their board on the support or non-support of this application. It does not annex any property tonight. It just authorizes staff to submit the application. So tonight, the presentation for project setting. So for just a brief history, Village 5, which is shown in blue, the specific plan and projects were approved in December 2017 with the general development plan and rezone or pre-zone of Village 5 occurring in January of 2018. What's shown on the northeast corner of this project site is Special Use District B Northeast Quadrant. It was the remainder of the consolidation of Village 5 and Special Use District B that is not part of this application. Special Use District B Northeast Quadrant had received project approval by City Council and has already received authorization to submit an application. That application has been in with LAFCO for about 18 months, and we are confident that we are completing the tax sharing agreement with that area within the next month, and hopefully go to hearing within the next 2 to 3 months for the specialty for that small component of our annexation area. The remnant area, the unincorporated area of Village 7 is shown here in the hashed red. The Village 7 specific plan was approved in June of 2010. Majority of the Village 7 project area, which was under the control of Lewis Land Development, was annexed in May of 2014. This is the area that was not annexed at that time, approximately 187 acres. That in order for an application for annexation to move forward would need to be pre-zoned, and that would be subject of one of the recommendations from the city today. The presentation will begin with a discussion of the Village 7 land use and requested entitlements, and then move to Village 5. And then I will be turning the presentation over to our environmental consultant, Jonathan Tepelo from ESA, who will go into greater detail of the environmental actions that was taken by the city in order to bring this application before council, including compliance with a court order and a re-evaluation of Village 7 as requested by a interested party. So the Village 7 pre-zone annexation authorization, again, is just one requirement of a city prior to being able to submit an annexation application is to pre-zone the areas subject to annexation. The remainder portions, again, were pre-zoned in 2010 and annexed in 2014. These three areas comprise of approximately 187 acres, known within the Village 7 specific plan, identified by names of the Shiber property, the Atkin Ranch 2, and the remainder properties. Each of those are identified in the specific plan, were not pre-zoned as part of the general development plan. So the remainder parcel is approximately 40 acres, and it is pre-zoning is low and medium density residential, parks, and right of way. The Shiver property is low density residential and open space. Atkin Ranch 2 is low medium density residential, open space, both recreational park and linear parks, and associated right of way. So the staff is requesting that the council take first reading of an ordinance to pre-zone these remnant areas of Village 7 for application for annexation. In addition to a request from an interested party on evaluating the environmental impact report that was certified for Village 7 and its age being approximately 11 years old as of today, we had significant conversations with interested parties in that area about concerns regarding regarding annexation and their ability to continue agricultural uses. Taking our recent activity with the Village 5 specific plan and general development plan and finding an opportunity to incorporate the idea of an agricultural overlay for the remnant areas of Village 7 in order to allow the property owners to, upon annexation into the cities, continue and or modify their agricultural uses consistent with their current activity and desired future activity on those sites until they voluntarily determine to develop. So staff is recommending adoption of a general development plan amendment to incorporate the agricultural overlay zone into Village 7. The requirements and regulations that are set forth in the proposed ordinance are exactly the same as the agricultural overlay that was approved for the Village 5 project area, including the setbacks, the ability to change agricultural uses to intensify and modify, and also first rights. If the established agricultural use is in place, then any adjacent development would need to be aware of that and mitigate appropriately. So all of the concerns that were addressed in the Village 5 agricultural overlay also are included in the Village 7. This is also a opportunity to allow for annexation of properties in Village 7 that are unincorporated, that are under Williamson Act contracts that without an agricultural overlay zone would need to either cancel the contracts prior to annexation or would be inconsistent with the environmental impact report. So this provides an opportunity to continue that agricultural uses while being part of the city of Lincoln. Now with the Village 5 requested entitlements, we are requesting annexation authorization for a significant portion, just over 4,000 acres of Village 5. So what you're seeing in the color is the area identified for the application to be brought forward to LAFCO. The area, northeast area that's not shaded with the between the green and purple on the northeast corner is a combination of Special Use District B, which is on the east side of Nelson, and then an area of Village 5 that is not slated for annexation for this annexation application at this time. The applicant of the Village 5 specific plan and the city have had significant conversations with property owners in that project area and evaluated through surveys and written communication of their opposition to annexation. Additionally, and after analyzing the potential development opportunity located directly south of the airport and the overflight zone and the restrictions based on that environmental condition existing, allowed staff to reevaluate the opportunity of annexing this at this time. As stated in the staff report, although it is not desirable to have an unincorporated area of a project, it is not desirable to create this unincorporated area it can be allowed with one exception, and that is when we've identified that the inclusion of this unincorporated area into the overall annexation plans would result in a failure to obtain necessary votes to annex. So we are proposing, and staff is supportive of allowing that area to annex in the future when they voluntarily desire, at some future date, if they so desire, or remain unincorporated, and bring forward this application for formal review and determination from LAFCO. Again, the LAFCO is an independent body and will make a determination based on their analysis of their policies and state regulations. This is the application we are looking to bring forward. The 4,000 acres of Village 5 and just over 187 acres of the remainder unincorporated Village 7. Again, one of the reasons behind our additional analysis is the Lincoln Regional Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan and the significant constraints it places on the properties in that area for future development, limitations on heights, densities, opportunity for subdivision, where current agriculture or even the country estates pre-zone area would be the maximum of what could potentially be developed in this area. And whether or not that is annexed today or in the future would not impact the logical development of the remaining portions of Village 5. Again, highlighted here in the box of blue, Village Rural Residential, small amounts of office and commercial and professional office on the west side of Nelson would remain unincorporated until some future time when those property owners determine on their own whether or not to annex into the city of Lincoln. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Jonathan to discuss the Village 5 recirculated EIR, which is the result of a court order to revisit 3 sections of the Village 5 EIR. And after that, he will be presenting the Village 7 addendum to the Village 7 EIR, which was requested by an interested party when we began this process in July of 2020, when we started looking at preparing an annexation application, or at least a request to City Council to allow staff to submit the application. We received significant comment about the rightness of the Village 7 EIR and whether or not we needed to revisit it and ensure that during this 11 years that there are not new concerns or cumulative impacts that were not previously identified in 2010 that are in reality in the city in 2021. So now I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, Steve, and good evening, Council and Mayor Silhai. I am John Teofilo, Project Manager for Environmental Science Associates. I am accompanied by Brian Boxer, ESA's Project Director for this project, and both of whom will be available for any questions related to the CEQA process following this presentation. My portion of the presentation covers project background, the draft partially recirculated EIR, comments on the draft partially recirculated EIR, the final partially recirculated EIR, and the remaining CEQA process. I will also discuss the CEQA process conducted for the Village 7 specific plan. The city released the notice of preparation for the Village 5 specific plan EIR on May 22nd of 2014. The city received 29 NOP comment letters regarding the scope of the environmental analysis for the EIR. The draft EIR was then circulated for public review and comment for a period of 45 days that ended on October 11th of 2016. The City of Lincoln received 25 comment letters during the comment period on the draft EIR for the proposed project. The City of Lincoln certified the final EIR for the Village 5 specific plan and approved the Village 5 specific plan on December 5th of 2017. On January 12th of 2018, following the City Council certification of the 2017 EIR and approval of the Village 5 specific plan, an opponent of the project filed a petition of writ of mandate in the Superior Court of California in the County of Placer, alleging violations of the California Environmental Quality Act. The court issued a preemptory writ of mandate on April 13th of 2020, upholding two of the petitioner's arguments related to mitigation of potentially significant impacts to biological resources and the level of analysis conducted for potential project impacts related to transit. A final judgment was filed on June 25th of 2020. For impacts related to agricultural resources and biological resources, the court found that the EIR improperly deferred mitigation for agricultural impacts and impacts to biological resources in relying on the draft Placer County Conservation Program, and the judgment further reiterated the finding from the ruling that the alternative mitigation measures required in the event that the PCCP is not adopted were determined to be adequate. Impacts related to transit, the EIR fails to adequately analyze impacts to transit. The court also found it identified severability of the findings, identifying that a piece of legislation which states, to define severability, it refers to a provision in a contract or a piece of legislation which states that if some of the terms are held to be illegal or otherwise unenforceable, the remainder should still apply. Certification of the EIR and the adoption of findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations as they relate specifically to reliance on the PCCP as mitigation and impacts to transit are severable from the remaining project approvals. Therefore, the other parts of the EIR and approvals that are not relevant or covered by the court findings remain valid and no further action is required pursuant to the court findings. Thus, the court directed the city to make appropriate corrections to the EIR, but stated that all other project approvals were based on portions of the EIR that are not affected by the court's decision, and no remedial action is required unless compliance with the writ changes or affects the other project approvals. The ruling directed the city to take corrective action that brings the agricultural and biological resources mitigation measures into compliance with CEQA and prepares an analysis that adequately discusses transit. The city's response was to revise and recirculate relevant sections of the Village 5 specific plan EIR in the form of a partially recirculated EIR. The city initiated the corrective action identified by the court by passing Resolution 220-122, which decertified portions of the Village 5 specific plan EIR and portions of the city's findings of fact and statement of overriding considerations, all as they relate to: 1, reliance on the PCCP as mitigation for agricultural resource impacts and biological resource impacts, and 2, for impacts to transit. The city then prepared the draft partially recirculated EIR, which revised and recirculated the following sections of the 2017 EIR. Section 3.2, Agriculture and Forestry Resources, Section 3.4, Biological Resources, and Section 3.15, Transportation and Circulation. The draft partially recirculated EIR was recirculated for a 45-day public comment period from May 7th, 2021 through June 21st. A notice of completion, OPR summary form, and digital copy of the DPR EIR were filed with the State Clearinghouse on May 7th of 2021 and have since been accessible on the CEQA.net website. A notice of availability for the DPR EIR was published in the Lincoln News Messenger and sent to appropriate public agencies, and the DPR EIR was also published on the city's website. Physical copies were made available for in-person review at the City of Lincoln Community Development Department and the Lincoln Public Library. Public comments were also invited and accepted during a City of Lincoln Planning Commission meeting on May 19th of 2021. 5 comment letters were received, plus comments during the Planning Commission meeting on May 19th of 2021. The key environmental issues raised included agricultural production, biological resources, the Placer County Conservation Plan, transit, transportation and circulation, and water supply. However, no new significant impacts or substantial increases in the severity of impacts were identified. The city has prepared a final partially recirculated EIR, which responds to comments received on the draft partially recirculated EIR. The final partially recirculated EIR includes the following components: Chapter 1, Introduction to the final partially recirculated EIR. Chapter 2, Revisions to the draft partially recirculated EIR made in response to public comments. Chapter 3, responses to all comments received in the draft partially recirculated EIR. And Chapter 4, the updated mitigation monitoring plan for the Village 5 project. Chapter 2 of the FPR EIR includes minor revisions to the draft partially recirculated EIR in the following sections. Section 3.2, agricultural and forestry resources, revisions were made to clarify the relevance of the PCCP as partial mitigation for impacts to important farmland and agricultural operations. And Section 3.4, biological resources, revisions were made to impact avoidance and minimization mitigation language to provide specific mitigation for American badger and bird species that are not covered under the PCCP. Chapter 3, comments and responses, provides responses to each of the comments received in the draft partially recirculated EIR. Responses to comments relevant to the draft partially recirculated EIR included written responses to the comments and revisions to the DPR EIR as identified in Chapter 2 of the final. Draft partially recirculated EIR comments that were not specifically relevant to the draft were also responded to with clarifying information where necessary. Comments on the draft partially recirculated EIR did not identify a new significant impact, substantial increase in the severity of impacts, considerably different feasible alternative, or inadequacy of the draft partially recirculated EIR that would require recirculation of the draft pursuant to sections 150.885.5 of the CEQA guidelines. Chapter 4 of the final partially recirculated EIR includes an updated mitigation monitoring plan, which incorporates changes to the mitigation measures from the draft partially recirculated EIR and final partially recirculated EIR into the mitigation and monitoring plan for the Village 5 and Specialty District B specific plan EIR from 2017. Primary updates to the MMP are related to implementation of the adopted PCCP. To conclude, no new significant impacts or substantially more significant impacts were identified following circulation of the draft partially recirculated EIR, and in the process of preparation of the final partially recirculated EIR that would require recirculation of the draft partially recirculated EIR. Having completed all prior required steps pursuant to CEQA and in compliance with the court's direction, the draft partially recirculated EIR and final partially recirculated EIR are presented to this council for certification. I will now transition to discussion of Village 7 specific plan EIR. The city intends to facilitate the annexation of remaining unincorporated parcels in the Village 7 specific plan area through the following actions. Amendment to the general development plan to apply an agricultural overlay zoning district to Village 7 specific plan pre-zoning, request to LAFCO for annexation of the remaining Village 7 specific plan area, and approval of an addendum to the Village 7 specific plan EIR to enable LAFCO approval of the request for annexation. To provide the project context as it relates to LAFCO, Placer County LAFCO needs to consider the adequacy of the Village 7 specific plan EIR in its decision. Major development projects in the region have advanced since completion of the EIR. LAFCO must consider approval of the city's annexation request with consideration of cumulative development. Thus, the city has prepared an addendum to the Village 7 specific plan EIR, which considers current and anticipated future cumulative development in combination with the Village 7 specific plan. In this process, it has considered major development projects in the region, which are identified in this regional map. They include the Village 5 specific plan, the Sunset Area Plan, and Placer Ranch specific plan, and the Placer Vineyards further to the south. Following CEQA guidelines were key considerations in preparation of the addendum. Section 15164 requires the preparation of supplemental or supplemental EIR if there are changes to the project, substantial changes in circumstances, or new information of substantial importance subsequent to the approval of the Village 7 specific plan EIR. Section 15168 requires that later activities in a program must be examined in light of the program EIR to determine whether an additional environmental document must be prepared. And Section 15182 identifies that certain residential, commercial, and mixed-use projects that are consistent with a specific plan adopted pursuant to Title VII, Division 1, Chapter 3, Article 8 of the Government Code are exempt from CEQA. The overall conclusions of the addendum are as follows. As it relates to Section 15162A1, there are no changes proposed in the Village 7 specific plan. Therefore, no major revisions to the Village 7 specific plan EIR are required as a result of the involvement of new significant environmental effects or substantial increase in the severity of previously identified significant effects. As it relates to section 15162A2, no substantial changes have occurred with respect to the circumstances under which the Village 7 specific plan would be undertaken, which will require major revisions to the Village 7 specific plan, EIR, due to the involvement of new significant environmental effects or substantial increase in the severity of previously identified significant effects. And section 15162A3, there is no new information of substantial importance showing that mitigation measures or alternatives previously found not to be feasible would in fact be feasible, or that any new feasible mitigation measures or alternatives exist and would substantially reduce one or more significant effects of the project. The key issues in the addendum related to agricultural resources and land use mitigation include the following. The application of the agricultural overlay zone would allow for the continuation of Williamson Act contracts through the zoning change that would occur as part of the annexation process. Therefore, mitigation measure 4.1-6B, which prevents the rezoning of land under Williamson Act contract, is no longer required and has been removed. Participation in the PCCP would provide additional mitigation for impacts to important farmland and agricultural operations that was not available when the EIR was completed. There are key issues related to biological resources mitigation, for which the in-kind conservation or compensation for impacts to habitat required in existing biological resources mitigation measures 4.8-10 of the Village 7 specific plan EIR would be satisfied through project participation in the PCCP and compliance with the requirements of the program as implemented in mitigation measure biological resources 1 presented in the addendum. This does not affect existing and ongoing processes for implementing compensatory mitigation that are currently underway for the Lewis property. Based on the analysis in the Village 7 specific plan EIR addendum, the following determinations can be made. The Village 7 specific plan EIR remains relevant and valid. There is no evidence in the record that there would be new or substantially more severe impacts than were disclosed in the EIR. A subsequent or supplemental EIR is not required, and the Village 7 project would implement all required mitigation measures. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I will now pass this presentation back to Mr. Prosser, who will provide concluding remarks.
I had to find the unmute button again. Change the screen when you start sharing the PowerPoint. So thank you, Jonathan. So on August 18th, these items before you tonight were heard before the Planning Commission. Upon the public hearing and testimony of the public, the Planning Commission adopted resolutions formally recommending that the City Council adopt a resolution certifying the Village 5 partially recirculated environmental impact report, including all associated documents as found as exhibits of that resolution. Approve a resolution approving the addendum to the Village 5 final environmental impact report, including the modified mitigation monitoring program. Introduce by title only and take first reading of the Village 7 pre-zoning ordinance, which allows for the consistency with the Village 7 specific plan and general development plan, and is required in order to submit an application to LAFCO for a request to annex the property. Introduce by title only and take first reading of ordinance amending the Village 7 general development plan, which allows the establishment of the agricultural overlay zone, consistent with the agricultural overlay zone was approved in Village 5. And then finally, adopt resolutions authorizing the initiation of annexation of just over 4,000 acres within the Village 5 specific plan area and just over 187 acres of the Village 7 specific plan area. As previously discussed, these projects, Village 7 and Village 5, were previously approved by the City Council. Those approvals are in full force and effect, and the action tonight is just the consideration of the annexation applications and the associated environmental documents. The Village 5 project applicants representatives are available and have requested some time to present to council. And this concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of you. All right, a reminder, since it's a public hearing, we'll do the same format. I'll go through each of our, the council members will ask questions, and then we'll open up the public hearing. I'll close the public hearing and we'll come back for comments. Does that work? Councilmember Andreatta.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have any questions, and just like before, I will save my comments for later. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Croskin.
I have no questions.
All right, Councilman Lauritsen.
I just have one question. There was some discussion about islands that are not being annexed. Who ultimately makes that decision whether they want to be annexed or not?
For the unincorporated area of Village 5 that's not being brought forward, it would be the property owners in that unincorporated area would have to voluntarily apply to the city for annexation in the future based on current state regulations. It would be a voluntary process to apply. What we see, these properties are still within the Village 5 project area, specific plan area, and within our sphere of influence. So at some point in the future, they would be able to annex into the city. Traditionally, that occurs when properties that are immediately abutting incorporated cities have some type of on-site infrastructure failure that requires them to then reach out to the local government to obtain assistance for a well drying up or a septic system failing when there are services that are going to be in proximity to those properties. Or at some point, either the current property owner or their heirs decide that they feel redevelopment of the property is beneficial to them.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Lauritsen, if I could just tag onto that very quickly, whether there is the legal creation of an island pursuant to LAFCO and their LAFCO policy Roman numeral 3D2, that would be a determination that would be made by LAFCO at a hearing before LAFCO if recommended by this council. So that is not an item that is before the council this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I see that Councilmember Joyner has joined us. So I don't know if you have any questions before we go to the public hearing.
No questions at this time, Mayor.
Okay. I will officially open the public hearing. Ms. Scanlon, do we have any comments?
Yes, Mayor, we did receive 2 letters of support prior to the meeting, which were forwarded to City Council from Lorraine Greco and Tom Indieri from the Lincoln Area Chamber of Commerce. We also received 2 comment letters in opposition of the project from Solari Law Firm on behalf of the Shivers. And I do have a number of hands raised. Susan Wechter, please go ahead. Susan, please, there you go.
I think sorry, first time. Okay, you guys can hear me. My name is Susan Wechter. I reside in the area that has the northeast that's been cut out of the new Village 5 Annex application. My concern or question would be that it seems to me that the entire reason that we've been cut out, although it might feel like a momentary victory for us out here, was simply because it was known that we may have enough votes to protest it if LAFCO were to approve the annexation after the application was processed. So it's my impression that we may have been cut out solely to avoid that. My concern would be that at such time, the other villages near the area in the sphere of influence do annex and develop, we may be what LAFCO considers an island. And at that time, I would lose my right to protest because islands can be annexed without right to protest. So that was one of the concerns. Again, I still have all the same concerns I had before with if there is enough resources to be able to provide for safety. I believe one of the reasons that their intent of annex is to provide better services for the persons living in that region. We already are being provided for in this Village 5 area quite well through the Placer County resources. And I'm not confident that we would have the full resources for annexing that area. I am still concerned with just preserving the agricultural land as much as possible and falling in line with the state's planning priorities to identify an infill development in previously annexed areas to avoid having urban sprawl, such as making spaces for new commercial places and or rezoning so that you could put in higher density areas of housing to meet the needs for California, but still preserve the agricultural lands that are out here. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Scanlon, was Craig, Christina not on the line when we first went out for public comment? Because we do normally hear from them first.
I didn't see, I apologize. I didn't see his hand raised. He might be on the panelist, so I apologize.
Can we see?
Yes, he is on. He is unmuted and he's on video.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, members of the City Council. I'm Craig Christina. I'm with Richland Communities and really pleased to be here tonight. Thanks for allowing me a few minutes here just to chat about the project and kind of what we're here for tonight. I think Steve did a great job in explaining what's in front of you, an ESA on the applications, or I should say the environmental review that was done on the project. But as we've heard, throughout the public process, which is something that we actually do enjoy about development here in California, is being able to have the public process and get comments. So things aren't done in a vacuum, and we got to hear from all sides to make a decision. And so with that, we did have a planning commission hearing last month on the project, and a number of issues were raised or questions. And so I did want to just take a few minutes just to address some of those. So the council and members of the public can hear kind of the issues that were raised and kind of what's going on. What has happened since 2018? The lawsuit, as discussed, that's what ESA was describing on the EIR being redone for 2 chapters. But while that was challenged in court, the court did decide favorably and on the side of the city and Richland on the vast majority of all the items. But there were those 2 that did come back back in front of you tonight. We think that's important for everyone to note too. There was a lot of things discussed about the project in Village 5 and the annexation and different issues, which luckily the court did decide favorably with the city on. But we do have those 2 chapters in the EIR to recertify. And they also did upheld all the other approvals that were made from the zoning and the ag overlay, the general development plan, and saying those were all severable and are not at stake and were done legitimately. There's another item that keeps coming up, and it's no surprise, and that was on the ag overlay. And so the ag overlay, it's just like any other ordinance in the city. But a question that was, or a position that was raised at Planning Commission and in other public comments were that the ag overlay, we shouldn't be doing this because it could just be overturned by a future city council. And really that's true about any ordinance that the city approves or any code. And so, I think what's in front of us is the opportunity for the city to make decisions that you feel are best for the circumstances and good for the city. And now while codes can change, it does require the same process to remove it as it would if it was approved. And so that would be same public process with hearings and notifications, and also abide by the California Environmental Quality Act. And so things can change. The city can have that ability to change that ordinance in the future, although it'd be very rare, and there'd be a process to go through. And so we've also heard some of the commentary too on just the annexation boundary. Ms. Wechter also brought that up. We heard that in some written correspondence with the city. But the boundary does specifically react to the input that was received during public comment in 2017 and 18, and also in the subsequent mailed out surveys to all the registered voters within the Village 5 boundary. And so we would take the contrary approach and say this is not something that is being done to exclude somebody to game the system. This was truly, in fact, to react to the comments and the desires of property owners around the Rockwell Lane and Neighbor Lane area that had a desire to not be annexed. Now, we can't address and we can't adhere to all the requests that are made. We had a lot of surveys back. We sent out about 200 to the registered voters and had a very significant return back of those. But to be able to draw the boundary in which it is in front of you, they do have to make some findings. And the findings can't just because somebody requested it. There has to be enough of a reason behind it, a concentration of that, but also that there is not, it doesn't undermine the future developability of the rest of the annexed area. And so anyway, while I'm not an annexation attorney, I know they have weighed in on it, and it is a legitimate drawing of the boundary. And we hope that the city council does view it as a response to the feedback that we have all heard through the public comment period, and trying to address as much as we can through this boundary. And I love what Steve has said in his response to Councilmember Lauritsen's question. The pre-zone still exists, and the specific plan, the NDIR still exists, covering the development potential for the area that's not being applied for in this boundary. So it would be up to the landowner in the future to make that application if that's their desire to annex in. So they wouldn't have to go through so much of the same process. They've kind of fast forward to where we're at today and look at their property on its own. And so we're not taking anything away, but we do, we have heard, we have listened, and want to make sure that that boundary, adheres as much as we can to the input, although not everyone's request can be reflected in the boundary. And kind of the last thing would just be on the landowner support. I was pleased I was able to see some of the public support comments, landowner support comments coming in, both through Planning Commission and now at City Council with the list growing. It's not just Richland. We do own a significant portion of Village 5. We're not the only landowner. We don't make up the majority. But there are so many now, significant landowners and farmers that would be operating under the ag overlay rules that see the benefit in this. And we definitely need to, consider that too in your decision making, because it's so normal for everyone to hear the opposition, which is usually the only or the loudest voice in these type of matters. But I'm very happy to see that some very significant landowners and residents in Village 5 are stepping forward to support the project. And so again, thank you for your consideration tonight. And I'm here in case you have any questions you want to send over to me or respond to any issues that are brought up in the future during this hearing. So thank you.
Thank you. Sorry about not seeing you first. Ms. Scanlon, are there others?
No problem.
Yes, we do have a phone number ending in 0115. Please go ahead. You'll need to unmute yourself, please. Yes.
Thank you. I've got two devices going here.
I'm sorry, you're going to need to turn your devices down. You're getting a feedback issue. Okay, he dropped off. Next, we have Mr. Garabedian. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Mike Garabedian, Hugh Lincoln. My first exposure to LAFCO was in 1974. And then in the year 2000, I followed the State Commission on Local Governance in the 21st Century and the report it issued. And I want to say that Susan Webster, I think her name is, you should listen to her. She has as good an understanding as anybody who's talked here so far. I think she has an excellent understanding of LAFCO and what it's about and what its purposes are. Now, the last municipal services review was done in 11 years ago, so it's probably based on information 12 years old. They're supposed to be done every 5 years. The city deserves to have that MSR done and in hand, and you do too before you act on this tonight. the whole focus of the commission in 2000 was very much on services. And it was based on very much on what Orange County did, where the LAFCO there would gather all of the possible people that would serve an area and determine who was best to serve that area. That is a critical focus about this that she also Webster also turned upon and developed. So this report is 817 pages, and it is far more than you can expect the public to deal with. Most of the focus tonight is on CEQA. This city needs a workshop, a public workshop on this issue that gets into the services issues and has the ability to look at that MSR and has the ability to look at this project. The people, the citizens, the people need to be informed. It's not just CEQA. So the need for this kind of review is, I think, essential for the public. It's not good enough that staff has a fluid understanding of what's going on, because he did not develop the LAFCO issues that you need to be aware of, however. And if the city doesn't have a workshop, then somebody has to put one on. If it's not going to be the city, the public deserves to know. But first of all, and most importantly, municipal services review. That's what you need. The one you have is outdated, and it would be irresponsible to act and move forward on this without getting that MSR. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Chris Davis. Please go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm kind of on short notice. We were thinking that the meeting was tomorrow, so I apologize. But we have sent in several letters over the years. We are one of these outlying pieces of property in the Village 7 that I think we might even be the only ones that really do not want to be incorporated into the city limits. And as a warning to those in Village 5, it's coming your way where you don't have a say in it. And that's the way it's looking right now for us. We've raised cattle here on this place for 4 generations. And it's just a small 10-acre place. My husband has to rent property in other places, but he brings them home here to calve them out and to wash the calves and feed them. And we've had our grandchildren working in the barns, like I said, 4 generations. So I'm concerned that we're not going to have any say in this. And even with the overlay, the ordinance can change later. And I think that it's coming the way. I see that we're being thrown in with Village 5. Basically, it feels like what we want doesn't count in all this. So I do want to go on the record still and continuing that we wish to just stay in the county and be able to raise our livestock. But I do want to warn the people in Village 5 that it's going to come to your doorstep where they're going to say you're not going to have a choice either. So thank you for listening. And I wanted to voice my opinion so that I could continue to say the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stan Nader. Please go ahead.
Thank you. At the last LAFCO meeting, the executive director told the commission she would be bringing a contract for Lincoln's municipal service review to their October meeting. Municipal service reviews are used by the commission to determine if a jurisdiction's sphere of influence should be increased or decreased based on the jurisdiction's ability to provide services to their residents. Given the fact that the city of Lincoln has the lowest per capita public safety level of any California city, I think it would be prudent to wait for the results of the MSR before the city considers any further annexations to the city. In reviewing the staff report, there are 25 parcels within the proposed annexation that are in the Williamson Act. This represents 1,380 or 68 acres of the 4,016 acres proposed for annexation, and is 32% of the total area. Should the city assume administration of these contracts and not renew them, it would be equivalent to inverse condemnation of those individuals' property that may have the desire to continue farming well past 10 years. On page 67 of the staff report, which is 3.2-14, it states on the one of the LAFCO policies, which reads, generally annexations of farmland shall not be permitted when significant areas of non-productive farmland are already available. Development of vacant land within the city or district should be developed prior to fringe areas. The city currently has the original Village 7 and portions of Village 1 yet to develop. It seems like the city is getting ahead of itself by considering any annexation at this time. In the staff report, it admits the areas of Neighbor Lane and Rockwell Lane, if they were not removed from the annexation, it would fail by a vote of the landowners. This does not give the appearance, this does give the appearance that the city is attempting to stack the deck to push the annexation through. That certainly seems disingenuous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Albert Schreiber. Please go ahead.
Good evening, Albert Schreiber, Moore Road. First item is this item should have been pulled. It was publicly noticed incorrectly. As you heard, the Davises thought the meeting was tomorrow. You know, it's nice you have the Zoom room set up. Are you going to have something set up for the people that show up tomorrow? This item should have been pulled, period, and continued to another date. I think it's slimy that you're doing it on a night that it's only on Zoom and not in public. That's my opinion. What wasn't mentioned tonight was that, you know, the letter that our attorney sent to you is basically spelling out that what you're doing in the Village 5 part is illegal. You're basically not allowing those people that you created an island around to have a say in what happens to their own property. And it's a shame that Ms. Mollenkopf and Mr. Christina and Mr. Prosser are dancing around, putting as much sugar on it as they can, because the bottom line is, if you approve this tonight, you are taking away those people's right to vote what happens to their property. Okay. And I'm sure somebody at the city of Richland did the math. You're essentially taking everyone else in Village 5's right to vote, because as Mr. Prosser said, if you allow Village 5 to move forward, it's going to fail. So what you're doing is illegal. It's shameful. It's no different. You also didn't mention that this is still under litigation. Just like the Oak Tree Fund is under litigation, this is still under litigation. No mention of that. It's in appeal. It should be 6 to 8 months, give or take. We should have the response from the court. No mention of that tonight. Once again, shameful, slimy. And bottom line is, you know, I've been saying for years, the city is trying to shut the people down. And this is the ultimate. This is a congratulations to Mr. Prosser and Ms. Mollenkopf to take it to the next level and just basically shut down the people that are going to vote against this project. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Next, we have phone number ending in 0115. Please go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Looks like we're still having difficulties unmuting. So with that, I don't have any other. I'm sorry, I do have a hand raised. Phil Rodriguez, please go ahead.
Thanks, Gwen. I appreciate that. I will just, this is Phil Rodriguez with the Lewis Group of Companies. We're the dominant landowner in the Village 7 specific plan. One thing I would like to thank is Steve Prosser and John with ESA, just providing some clarity with respect to the Lewis Properties participation in the PCCP program to implement compensatory mitigation. We have already received our permits from the Army Corps of Engineers, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Department of Water Resources, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and they have essentially told us how we're going to mitigate, and we have secured the mitigation lands to solve the impacts to wetlands and species and habitat. So I appreciate clearing that up and providing some clarity. One thing that I will say, though, and I made this comment at the Planning Commission hearing, is that as most of you know, the Lewis Group worked closely with the city to negotiate a tax sharing agreement with the county back in 2013 and 2014 that would give the city a much better property tax split. And it was, fashioned as the Village 7 tax sharing agreement, but it only included the Lewis property since that was the only property that was being annexed at the time. My recommendation, and I'm indifferent, I'm a neutral party to this, whether or not you approve the annexation application or not, that if this moves forward, that the Village 7 portion of the annexation utilizes the Village 7 tax sharing agreement and doesn't rely on a tax sharing agreement that would need to be negotiated for the Village 5 specific plan. And the reason for that is just to maintain consistency within the entirety of Village 7 with respect to the tax sharing agreement and the future need to mitigate for, not so much mitigate for, but provide funding for police and fire services and roadway maintenance and landscape maintenance as well, and make sure that it's entirely consistent within the Village 7 specific plan. So that's all I had. I just wanted to thank Steve and ESA for the clarity and just to point that out with respect to the tax sharing agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no other hands raised.
Thank you so much. We'll bring it back and I will officially close the public hearing and we'll bring it back up to my colleagues. And I will start, I think comments will go through the same rotation and then we can open up the discussion. So Councilmember Andreatta.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I'm a little upset about the meeting being wrongly posted. I understand completely, simple human error. I did, as soon as I realized that, I did contact Mark Scott and the city attorney, and I asked, I'm like, are we in violation? Because even though the agenda says it, it was posted wrong on the website and was mailed to people. And so, and I intended to bring that up when we were doing agenda modification, but it got past me because I had done the flag salute and whatever, and then it got past me. So I apologize to the public for that. The other thing is that I did not know that this was going to be on this week's agenda. So in our last meeting, when we agreed to come back to Zoom just for this one meeting until we had, better guidance for COVID. And I know we were concerned about an increase in cases with staff and all that, which very, very concerned about as well. But I would not have said okay to Zoom if I'd have known that this was going to be on this agenda, because here we are, right? This has been sitting out in the wings for a really long time. We know that there's a lot of comment on here, and I really feel like we should have done this in person for this. So I just want to make that comment. I'm not blaming any staff or pointing fingers. I'm just saying that had I known that this was going to be on the agenda, I would not have agreed to a Zoom meeting, and I'm a little frustrated with that. But having said that, I'm going to share a few thoughts about how I feel about this project and the way that Village 5 and Village 7 are being pushed through together. It's really my belief that that government's main job is to protect the rights of its citizens. And I think property rights are at the top of that list. Protecting personal property rights is at the top of that list. And I listened to the Planning Commission meeting the other night. I got the recording and I listened to it. And I know there's been a lot of talk about the ag overlay and, you know, can a future council change it or can't they? And I appreciate Mr. Christina's comments about that it would take a big process just like this is to change it. And, you know, I found it interesting that Commissioner Lyons and Commissioner McKinney, they were having this conversation and they said the same thing. They said, well, yeah, you know, that's the way it is. Yes, a future council can change it. That's the way it is when you live in a society with elected representatives and people can make changes. They can make changes at the ballot box and they can come in and they can change what they want to. And that's just the way it is. And you know what, they're right. I do think that it would be a process, but I don't have any confidence that this ag overlay is set in stone, that it would not be changed. And to say that, you know, we've done all this work, and I appreciate the work on the ag overlay, 100%. I appreciate it. I think it's a good thing, and it gives a lot more protection. But to shirk my responsibility and say, well, we hope nobody changes it, and we think that they won't change it, and it would take a lot of process to change it. But the bottom line is that if future lawmakers and people who are in charge of this town, you know, several years from now want to, and it's a benefit to them, they can do it. And I, in good conscience, cannot kick my responsibility down the road and not protect people's rights right now. And I fully believe that government's main job is to protect the rights of the people, and that includes their property rights. I feel like that Village 5 can be annexed in a better way. They can use, when Sub B comes through, they can attach to that. I know that that's not what they want, and I'm sympathetic to their project, but I'm also more sympathetic to the property owners who have said from day one, this is not what we want. I met with Mr. and Mrs. Davis several months ago, and they showed me a letter that a previous city manager had given them, promising them that they would be left out of this annexation. It was a letter from the city, said, we're going to leave you alone. And then they brought it back to our former city manager, and she told them that letter means nothing. Well, I guess that's par for the course, right? If the city gives somebody a promise and then later they say it doesn't mean anything, I'm sorry, that's unacceptable. I understand the argument about the houses or the property that on Rockwell and Neighbor Lanes, you know, that they're on the edge, and that, you know, including them or not including them because they voiced their opinion about not doing that. Yeah, they have voiced their opinion. They didn't want to be part of it. But now you've left them out, and now they have no say moving forward at all. And then eventually they're not going to have any say over their property. And to me, what's happening with these property owners that do not want to be annexed, I know there are those who do want to, and they have the right to do what they want with their property. But there are many who do not want to be annexed. They want to be left alone. And to me, keep pushing this forward and trampling on their rights, it is a condemnation on the property owners. And I have never been okay with this, even before I was elected, never okay with this. Never okay with this plan. There are ways to get what the other property owners need, what Richland needs. And I'm not against Richland, and I'm sympathetic to they have a right to do what they want with their property. But to say that, well, you know, all these other people, they have developable land, and, you know, we can't leave them out because, you know, it wouldn't work. I'm fundamentally at my core sick to my stomach at how they have been steamrolled and how nobody listens to them. We're just going to move forward and do what we want because we have our general plan and we have this Village 5 that we're going to do it no matter what. And I want everybody to hear me that this is disgusting. And I will not vote for it this way. No. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Joyner.
A few questions for staff, actually. And I don't know if this is for Mr. Prosser or for the city attorney. Mr. Rodriguez's suggestion that the tax sharing agreement from existing Village 7 be applied to this remaining portion seems wise to me. Is there some modification that needs to be made to what's before us tonight to make that happen if my fellow council members agree that that's a good way to proceed?
No modification would be necessary tonight. The tax sharing negotiations have not even begun because that would be premature unless council authorizes an application.
Okay, but
we can utilize the Village 7 tax sharing to begin to facilitate the discussions with the county if directed, yes.
So I think what you're saying is we could use that as the same negotiating points. I think what Phil was saying was you're essentially annexing in an additional portion of Village 7, which in many respects already has an existing tax sharing agreement. So maybe I missed that. Maybe I'm wrong on that one. Christine?
Well, my answer would be a tax sharing agreement is a negotiation between two parties, and the county would have to be supportive of that position. We will present that position, but it would require both sides to be in agreement.
Okay.
Yes, the tax sharing agreement is specific to the acreage that was annexed in at the time of annexation. And so while it may be a starting point, it is something that we can take direction from council, but it is not part of this evening's action.
I've got you. So Mr. Nader's Williamson Act issue, can we address that? I think that's going to be you again, Christine.
Well, my answer for the Village 7 Ag overlay is a mitigation measure in the environmental impact report. So it would be contrary to the environmental analysis to cancel or non-renew that act without support of that individual property owner who is redeveloping and no longer utilizing the land for agricultural uses.
Right. What I think I heard Mr. Nader say is if the city takes over the contracts, and I'm not aware of the city having any desire to take over Williamson Act contracts from the county.
They would transfer to us upon annexation.
Oh, would they? Okay.
They do. I think Mr. Nader's comment had something to do with if the city were to cancel the contract, it would result in inverse condemnation, which would obviously be an action that the council would have to take in a public setting, giving direction to city staff to pursue that type of inverse condemnation.
Got it. So I'm going to back off right here. I've got a personal issue going on that's got me a little off my game, so I apologize for that if I didn't track something.
Thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Croskin.
A few thoughts. By holding out.
Talk to you later.
What? By holding out the area off of Nelson there, taking that outside of the annexation, I think we are acquiescing to the desires of that group of people. Plus the fact being in the B1 use zone is problematic anyway for development. I have the idea of an island that people have been talking about. That's not an issue for the city council to decide. We go ahead with the annexation with the request, with the way it is, with the outline and design of the property as it is, and LAFCO makes that decision. That's their responsibility. That's their purview, and that's what they're designed for. That's not our issue. I really get upset with the change of the ag overlay. You know, there's nothing to say that if we weren't doing anything at all, that the county couldn't go in on that land and make it commercial. You know, it's about the same as saying that a council would overturn an ag overlay in the situation of Lincoln. Everything that we do is subject to change by a follow-on council, by a follow-on legislative body. That argument is specious. Again, what we're asking, what we are being asked today is to put forth an application for annexation. There's a lot of things that happen after that in the LAFCO process. The one thing I would like to remind people of, as far as what Mr. Rodriguez said, the existing exact document for Village 7 tax sharing, the key to that document, if you remember, besides getting reasonable tax sharing, a balance between the county and the city, was a very significant thing, which was the ability to renegotiate that after a period of time. If I'm not mistaken, that period of time has already gone by in the Village 7 tax sharing agreement because it was time certain rather than based on development or something else. So at the minimum, when we go forward with the tax sharing agreement for Village 7, that part of the tax sharing agreement needs to be updated to reflect current time. We can't get any more transparent than we are. I personally don't see the difference between the number of people attending this meeting on Zoom and the number of people that attend the meeting in the council chambers. I don't think that there are people that don't attend this meeting because it is Zoom. So I don't think that this was some nefarious plan to sneak it through and get it voted on when in the dark corners because we were in a full Zoom situation. And it wasn't just this meeting. I think if I remember right, it was this meeting and the next meeting before we know what the long-term things are. Anyway, I think I've carried put my thoughts out there. You know, anything that we do, any single thing that we do can be overturned by a later council. The whole idea of whether you have an island or not, or whatever, our map is what goes forward to LAFCO. And LAFCO makes a decision on whether that's some nefarious ploy to screw people over or not. That's their decision. And I think the ag overlay provides much more protection for anybody involved in the ag business than we, the city, or most of the cities around here have ever done. And I think that the staff and the developers that worked and the ranchers that worked coming up with that plan, the overlay that was a great thing. So I'm done.
All right, thank you. Councilman Lauritsen.
Yeah, I want to thank Steve Prosser and Christine and our staff, Mr. Christina and the staff of Richland. I mean, it was an excellent presentation. Also, everything was presented fairly. I don't think anybody's voice is not being heard. We listen to everyone. We may not agree with everyone, but we do listen to everyone. And as far as this is concerned, I think we're respecting the property rights of individuals, whether it's especially with the agricultural overlay. And you can still farm your land. It's up to you if you want to change. As far as the islands or whatever, it's really up to the individual property owners whether they want to be annexed. I'm sorry, I just I really don't see the problems so much as as the opportunities for this city to grow. And Village 5 is a major part of our growth, and I kind of like I like the presentation, like what they want to do. It's not completely presented. I mean, it's not completely decided exactly what we're going to do, but we have to move on. So I'm definitely for this thing.
All right, and that just leaves me, I guess. Yeah, I guess I don't know that I have anything to add that hasn't been said. I think I agree most with what Dan said, particularly in response to the ag overlay. There's no decision that we could ever make that would tie future hands when it comes to a policy choice. So I would echo your sentiments on that. I also feel like it's a tricky one, right? Because we're talking about our own, like, people's homes and lands, and there's a lot of emotions that are right in that discussion. But we're also talking about land use and development and governance and building communities, and it is always this difficult balance. And I do feel like removing those where there was the most opposition was a very responsive thing for the applicant to do. I feel like they've done what is asked, and they've done it in a real way where they actually were trying to listen and trying to find solutions where solutions are available. And so I actually appreciated that. I didn't see it as a nefarious move. I saw it as a responsive step. And to Dan's point, if maybe I have misjudged that and there's something there I didn't see, fortunately, I'm not actually the one that's approving the map. LAFCO is, and that is a completely impartial body made up of all of these various representatives from all of the jurisdictions. And it's set up that way for a reason, so that there is that kind of step removed from all the different jurisdictions and entities to come to a decision that maybe there's things there I don't see it. And I'm glad that there's another step for someone that maybe can look at that closer. I don't have any other questions. I feel like I've met with staff, I've met with the applicant, I've asked all of my questions. They were all answered to my satisfaction. So that's where I'm at on it.
Madam Mayor, can I add a thought to your comments and to Councilmember Carlson's comments?
Please do.
We're talking about LAFCO here as being the body that actually takes a look at this, oversees this, and makes the final decision on annexation. Mr. Carlson brings up a really interesting point. The county, were this to remain in the county, could change anything they wanted to at any time, and they do not go before LAFCO at all. So we see examples of this all around us. Bickford Ranch, massive project right on our border, did not go through a LAFCO process. The county made their rulings, and that was that. Placer Ranch to our south is coming on in the same way. And left to their own devices, I can almost promise you, if Lincoln chose not to grow any further and control the level of growth and the level of amenities and the level of open space that we want in our community, the county would surround us and do that for us. And there would be no measure of control for us and no benefit in tax revenue or anything else as a result of that. So this process, I think, is actually very good for the property owners. I think it's being very respectful of those who, to the degree we can, who don't wish to at this time participate and be annexed. And I have to tell you, in my nearly 15 years being involved with the city, I have never seen a solution quite so elegant to the desires and needs of the property owners as the ag overlay. I think that's going to be a model that will be picked up by other communities and implemented there. And it's the basis of that is, if you want to farm, if you want to ranch, you have the right to do that until such time as you choose to develop. And it is true that we can't absolutely guarantee that no future council will overturn that. But it's hard to imagine a situation in which that would benefit the city to overturn that. So I think I just want to point out really that this LAFCO process that all of this is going through is a very good thing. And it's something that would not happen to these lands if the county were to decide they wanted to grow and change the zoning as they have to our south and to our east.
I do also appreciate that you just brought up like discussing what the ag overlay means, because that is one of the components of this project that took away any concerns that I possibly could have, because it is not requiring anyone to do anything. It's giving them more flexibility than they have right now, because right now you can use your property how your property is currently zoned. And with the ag overlay, you can do what you're doing now. You can switch it. You can decide that you want a different opportunity. They really just provides choice. And what I particularly liked that you just mentioned it, because it's been a long day and it was never, I meant to mention it, but it triggered me. I received many emails from landowners in support of the project, specifically because of the ag overlay, and thanks for that component and expressing strong desire that this move forward, and praising basically the process. And so I did want to mention that I know that it's a difficult thing and that there's not going to be everyone who's happy, but it does seem like they have tried very hard to do so. Where are we? Are we ready for a motion? Do we have more discussion? It sounds to me like everyone's kind of said where they are, and I just want to check and make sure.
Mayor, I just want to clarify one thing that Dan said. I want to make sure that it's clear that I wasn't saying that because the meeting was posted wrong, that it was done on purpose or that was nefarious. I didn't say that. What I said was it was posted wrong, it was sent out wrong, and legally we're responsible to fix it and to make sure everybody knows, and we didn't. And that's what I said, not that they did it on purpose. It was a simple human mistake. I don't even know who did it, and I don't care. It was a human mistake, but we are legally responsible to post. I mean, I get told that all the time. Oh, well, we have to post the agenda, or we have to do it. So, oh, we can't change it now. And all I was saying was that it caused problems and it makes us look bad. It makes us look like we're trying to do something that we're not. That was my point. And I just wanted to be clear about that. And I also just want to say that, I appreciate all of your perspectives. I agree. I know that we don't always agree on these things. And I do appreciate all the work that went into this and the protection of the ag overlay. But for you guys to sit there and say that they listened to all the landowners and that they responded, you know what? You're picking winners and losers. You're picking winners and losers. Some people are happy, but there are a lot of people who aren't. And I just don't understand it. But we're ready. Go ahead and you can make your motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
And just to be clear, there are several resolutions and ordinances, and we should go through them one by one.
Okay, I propose we adopt resolution 2021-178, recommending that the city council certify the Village 5 partially recirculated environmental report.
Second,
Can I get a roll call?
Yes.
Are we
Mayor,
voting on them
Councilmem-
one by one?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
No.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
When we do them all then, adopt resolution 2021-179, approving the addendum to the Village 7 final environmental impact report, hereby recommending that the city council approve the pre-zoning for the remaining portions of Village 7.
Second,
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
No.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
Okay, waive full reading and introduce by title only, ordinance dash 1040B, approving the Village 7 pre-zone.
Second. Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
No.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
Waive full reading and introduce by title only, ordinance 1041B, amending the Village 7 General Development Plan to establish an agricultural overlay zone.
Second,
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
No.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
Adopt resolution 2021-180, recommending that the city council authorize the initiation of annexation for approximately 4,016 acres within the Village 5 specific plan area.
Second,
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
No.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
Adopt resolution 2021-181, recommending that the city council authorize the initiation of annexation for the unincorporated portion of the Village 7 specific plan area.
Second,
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
No.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes. All right. That was all of them, correct?
That's all of
Sure, I'm
them. Mayor,
not-
can I make one point before we move on?
As, I don't know, Christine, can we do that in a public hearing? When it's been
I'm
closed
not
out?
sure, I'm not sure of what the point is. Is it a point of parliamentary process or? It's
No, I just-
kind of hard for me to comment, not knowing what the comment is.
I just want to reiterate, we do listen to everyone's voice, and although we may not agree, we do listen to people. So, I'm
I think
sorry.
That's probably fine, comment.
Yeah,
right?
so that's all I'm trying to say.
All right, thank you. We will move along. Want to make sure I'm not missing All right, we're on 9C, correct? Conduct a public hearing regarding Independence Unit 6 Environmental General Development Plan Amendment Tentative Subdivision Map. And then we'll take action on the following. I'll save those for the actual motion. And I believe our senior planner, Rob Perch, will be giving this staff report.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Silhai and fellow council members. The item before you this evening is a public hearing request to review a number of entitlements for the continued development of the Independence at Lincoln project and includes the following. Okay. Technical difficulty, hold on 1 second. Let me go back. There we go. All right. And includes an addendum to the Independence at Lincoln 2017 Environmental Impact Report, an amendment to the Independence at Lincoln General Development Plan, and a vesting tentative subdivision map, revising units 2 and 5 and adding unit 6, increasing the number of units from 575 to 591. The Independence at Lincoln project is composed of 194 acres and is located adjacent to the Glenmore subdivision to the east and north. Property used for school bus and maintenance operations to the north along with Nicholas Road. The Santa Clara Memorial Park Cemetery and single-family residential neighborhoods to the south, and undeveloped land to the west. In 2017, the city approved the Independence at Lincoln Master Plan Community, which includes low and medium density residential land uses, mixed use parcel on the along the north along Nicholas Road, and open space and public facilities to serve the development. More specifically, the project included the construction of 575 detached single-family residential units on 92.3 acres, a 2.7 acre mixed-use parcel, 45.8 acres of passive open space, stormwater detention and conservation areas, 13.6 acres of active parks, and approximately 4 acres of public facilities and major roadway areas. A general development plan was also approved that envisioned to create a community that incorporates 5 residential neighborhoods, each with distinct single-family residential lot sizes. 4 of the 5 neighborhoods are adjacent to and surround the Central Park, which is centrally located in the middle of the project site. There is also a 35-acre remainder site to the southeast corner of the project site. Currently, the applicant is requesting to modify a portion of the approved lots within the central portion of the site as shown herein as the darker purple, the yellow, and the lighter blue surrounding Park B and approximately located adjacent to and east of Park A. The applicant is requesting to reconfigure parcels within units 2 and 5 and create a new unit 6. This reconfiguration would result in an additional 16 parcels proposed for this amendment. All other project amenities and features within the Independence area would remain unchanged. The proposed changes would increase the overall lots from 575 to 591 by revising the lot sizes in unit 6 to 40 feet in width by 90 feet in depth. And the new lots are proposed generally along United Drive and United Court, Payne Street and Payne Court, and Gwinnett and Wolcott Streets. Along with the revised mapping, the applicant is requesting minimal changes, minimal amendments to the general development plan to incorporate the new 40 by 90 lot sizes, basic general development standards for unit 6, updates to the acreages for the land uses, minor updates to the language for each of the units, and updates to the mapping exhibits. The city has determined that an addendum to the Independence at Lincoln 2017 Environmental Impact Report is the appropriate level of documentation to satisfy the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. The addendum was prepared in order to evaluate whether new information received regarding the project would result in any new or substantially more adverse significant effects or require any new mitigation not identified in the Independence at Lincoln 2017 Environmental Impact Report. Because of this, the city hired Ascent Environmental to prepare the addendum. And on the call this evening is Alta Cunningham and Amanda Olek-Julin, in case there are any follow-up questions pertaining to the addendum. The analysis of the project determined that the project does not require any major revisions to the analysis previously adopted in the 2017 Environmental Impact Report, nor are there substantial changes that would occur with respect to the circumstances under which the project would be undertaken. Based on the analysis provided in the addendum, there are no substantial evidence in the modified project would have a significant effect on the environment beyond impacts that were previously evaluated in the Environmental Impact Report prepared back in 2017 for the Independence at Lincoln project. Therefore, the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, findings concerning alternatives, and statement of overriding consideration adopted as part of the 2017 EIR by the City Council via Resolution 2017-087 are still applicable to the proposed project. The Planning Commission approved the project via a vote of 5-2 and recommended approval of the project to the City Council. Supported by the analysis provided in the staff report, staff has concluded that the amendment to the Independence at Lincoln project is consistent with the goals, policies, and intent of the city's general plan, municipal code, and the Independence at Lincoln general development plan. Staff reviewed the internal design of lots, roadways, parks, and open space, and determined that the project is well designed and will have a positive addition to housing options within the city of Lincoln. The applicant is on the line, and I'm here, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll go through the same process. So we'll do questions first, public comment and comments. Councilmember Andreatta.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I listened to the Planning Commission meeting and I heard the applicant speak on it and it was explained pretty well. So I think I'm good right now. Thank you.
Councilman Joyner.
No questions. This is a refinement of the existing plan that the developer feels makes their project better. It doesn't request a change or need a change in zoning. I've always liked this project. It's utilizing a piece of ground that is incredibly challenged with all the wetlands and coming up with a beautiful project. So no questions and no issues moving forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Croskin.
I, like my colleague Holly, watched the Planning Commission meeting and they covered any questions that I might have had. And I agree that this is, it's I think, a very typical type of change that you would see as a project goes along and the market changes or matures. So doesn't, it's not a big deal. Thank you.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yeah, I really don't have any questions either. This seems to be a fairly minor change.
All right. I also don't have specific questions, but I'm interested in hearing the public comment. So I will officially open the public hearing. Ms. Scanlon, do we have any comments?
Mayor, we do have one hand raised. Mr. Garabedian, please go ahead.
Thank you. Mike Garabedian, Placer County Tomorrow. I think the issue here is the speed at which the city is expecting the public to understand what's going on with this, and the public and the council need a more thorough explanation. And if the county isn't going to get it, I hope there's some way for the public to understand the significance of these issues. And getting back to the services and municipal services, we need a report about exactly how these projects are going to pay for themselves, and if they are actually going to pay for themselves. So I tend to see the need for, I don't know if I don't know what's going to happen, but I see the need for the public to be better informed than the city is informing us. And that has to be done some way, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
And by the way, I oppose this project too.
Any others, Ms. Scanlon?
No, no other hands are raised.
All right, I will close the public hearing and bring it back up to the council for our comments. I think I won't go through order because it seemed like most of you indicated you had none. So if you do have any further need for discussion, let's address those now. All right, hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to adopt resolution 2021-182 approving the addendum to the Independence at Lincoln 2017 Environmental Impact Report is the appropriate level of documentation to satisfy the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act.
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
Yes. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
Motion to introduce and waive first reading of ordinance 1042B, approving the amendments to the Independence at Lincoln General Development Plan.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes.
Sorry, Dan, I've been leaving you hanging. There's an N on the end of each one of these that I haven't been reading out loud, so my voice probably goes up. There is no and on the end of this one. Adopt resolution 2021-183 approving an amendment to the Independence at Lincoln tentative subdivision map, revising units 2 and 5 and adding unit 6, increasing the number of residential lots from 575 to 591.
Second.
Thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Andriotta,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Silhai.
Yes. All right. That concludes public hearings. We do not have any general business items tonight, so we will move forward to council initiated business. I'll ask each of you if we have any, starting with Councilmember Andriotta.
I do not. Thank you.
Councilmember Joyner,
I have none.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Oh,
Councilmember Lauritsen.
I don't have any either.
All right, we'll move on to information items. We'll do the same thing again. Councilmember Andriotta,
No, I don't. Thank you.
Councilmember Joyner,
I don't think so, no.
Councilmember Carlskent,
can't think of any.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
None. Thank you.
I do have just one quick one. We met today with the Gathering Inn regarding a proposal for a project called the Campus of Hope. It would be a quite large project is the proposal, somewhere around 500, 600 beds out near the jail, past the casino. And I just kind of wanted to put it out there that it's out there and that we had an initial discussion. It was gracious of them to give us a heads up. And so I thought that I'd pass that heads up along. And with that, thank you everyone who sat through, and for staff and for all of the consultants who were here to help give us advice tonight. And then I also just want to again thank our council. I have to say I really appreciate the tone that we have cultivated over the last several years. This is not how it started a few years ago. Things could get a little testy, and this is one of those nights that would have gotten testy. And I think that I just really appreciate how everyone is respectful and listens and tries to give that grace. I think it makes us better for our residents and for our constituency. So appreciate you all. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you,
Good
everybody.
night.
Night.
Good night.